Hey guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about creating procedures, and then there's an activity for you to do afterwards. So let's review first of all. In a second, we've talked about the first three steps of the scientific method. So we observed and wondered, and we looked at clover and wondered about it, and we looked at a couple of other things. And then we identified a question, and we came up with the question, does the amount of water affect the germination time of clover? And then we identified the variables. So the independent variable is the amount of water. And we're going to go with 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters, and 20 milliliters. And the dependent variable is the germination time of the clover. And we're going to measure that in days. And then we developed our hypothesis. And yes, you already talked about that just now. So our null hypothesis is that the amount of water will not affect the germination time of clover. And then our H1, H2, and H3 are about how 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters, and 20 milliliters of water are going to make the roots or the germination time shorter, I believe is what we agreed on. So now we're ready to figure out how we're going to do this experiment. So what are the steps we need to do in order to do the procedure? So again, here's our hypothesis. I guess if I'd gone to the next step, we have it right there. So the amount of water has no effect. The germination time is the null. The 5 mils of water will have the shortest germination time. 10 mils will have the shortest germination time, or 20 mils will have the shortest germination time. So the next step is to plan and test. And in plan and test, there's kind of 4 things you need to do. You write a procedure, so you write the steps that you're going to do to complete the experiment. We create a data table, and then we do our experiment and collect our data. So today we're going to talk about number 1, writing a procedure. So what is a procedure? If you think about a recipe, a procedure are like the step-by-step instructions on how to set up and run your experiment. So someone should be able to follow your procedure exactly and get the same results as you do. So if you think about that, this is really the steps to a recipe. Because if you do a recipe and you follow the directions exactly, you should get the same results the chef did. Now, sometimes it doesn't work as well, like in my case. Sometimes you don't get the exact same results. But in other cases you do, and you'll see that if you follow the directions exactly, you're more likely to get the results that you're expecting to get. So how do you write a procedure? There's 3 things that we need to accomplish when we write a procedure. We need to explain, 1, how to set up the experiment. So what do we need to do to get it ready to run? And then we need to explain how to keep the experiment running. And then we need to explain how to gather and record our data. So what do well-written procedures look like? Well, there's really 4 things we look for when we're writing procedures. 1, the steps should be simple and easy to follow. I like to say that I don't use the word and, like do this and this, because that makes 2 steps. And if you think about it, if you give somebody too many steps, they can't remember. The second thing is steps are numbered. If you think about trying to read a paragraph with directions in them, when you try to read a paragraph, it gets really annoying because you have to keep rereading the paragraph. You have to start at sentence 1 and figure out where you left off. Where if somebody had said, okay, do step number 1 and then number 2, if you leave off at number 5, you don't have to read through 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to know that before you do 6. You can just go to number 6. So we really want our steps numbered. And then we want to start, number 3, we want to start with a verb or an action word. So we want to start with things like add, mix, pour, measure, count, label, verbs that tell the person exactly what to do. We don't use words like first, next, then, what you should do is. We avoid those, so we don't want to use those words. And then the 4th one is, our steps should include specific measurements and details that are important to the investigation. So instead of saying just saying add water, you should say add 5 milliliters of water, and then explain maybe even where to put the water. So procedures are like recipes. They are directions to follow so you can be successful. So if we look at these 2 recipes, which one would you rather follow? Think about it. Now, Why do you prefer one over the other? So in your Pear Deck slide, you guys don't have to do this if you're just watching it, if you missed class today. But think about, what are the reasons that you prefer the one over the other? I like the fact that the one is divided into steps, and they're short steps. It's just one thing to do at a time. Now the recipe is probably longer, it probably takes 2 pages, but it's got one thing. The directions I really need are right at the top. It tells me how much prep time I need, how long to cook it, and how long it takes to get ready. So it's very sequential. It's easy to follow. There's a tip as to how to be better at it. So there are some things that make it easy to follow. Let's take another look at some other examples of procedure and discuss how they can be made better. So first of all, it says how to take your temperature. Take the thermometer and turn it on. Then what you should do is put it somewhere on a person's head and move it across their skin and look at what the temperature is. There's lots of things wrong here. What would we do to make it better? So here's what I'd like you to do is tell me one thing based on the rules that we have written there that you would do to make this procedure better. Okay, so think about one thing that you could do very easily. So what I would do is I would write it like this. 1, push the middle button and wait for the beep. 2, take the thermometer and set it against the middle of the person's forehead. See picture. Pictures are great. If you can add pictures for people, that really helps. Push lightly into their skin. Okay, so not hard, but lightly. Number 4, move the thermometer across the forehead to one side and reach their temple, that's the side of their head, while pushing the middle button. Release the button. Record the temperature shown. Number 7, then repeat 2 times to ensure accurate results. So if you look, the steps are simple. They hardly use any ands unless it was important to continue that step. The steps are numbered. All of them start with an action word, something to do, and the steps are specific and include measurements or amounts. So why was it better? We just talked about that. The steps are simple and easy to follow. They're numbered, all of those things. We avoided the words like first, next, and then, which were in the initial. So here we go. Help. I asked my husband to make me a sandwich for lunch, and these were my directions. Will you please make me a peanut butter sandwich for lunch? And this is what I got. And I'm not joking. Like, this is the peanut butter sandwich my husband would make. My children hate it when my husband makes lunch because if he puts mayonnaise or Miracle Whip on a sandwich, it's all right in a glob in the middle. So when I asked for this sandwich, I should have known better, but I did not. Okay. So what should I have done to get a better sandwich made? So tell me something in the Pear Deck. What could I have done to get a better sandwich made? You guys don't have to do the Pear Deck, but you're explaining it to me. So you're thinking, well, you could have said to spread the peanut butter out to the edges of the bread. That might have helped. Okay. So I could say spread a thin layer of peanut butter all the way to the edges of the bread. Add the jelly. Spread the jelly to the edges of the bread. Add a thin layer of peanut butter to the other slice of bread. Now this I learned so then your sandwich doesn't get soggy. You know how the jelly makes the bread all soggy? If you put a layer of peanut butter on the other side, bread does not get soggy. Then place the second slice of bread directly on top of the other slice of bread. Now those are very bare bones directions, but they're better than, would you please make me a peanut butter sandwich, since I didn't even get jelly on my sandwich. Okay. So one big mistake is we assume people know what we mean when we give directions. So make sure your directions are clear and include all the details as well as following the 4 rules that we learned today. Okay. Remember that to make a better procedure, you need to have simple and easy to follow steps. The steps should be numbered. They should start with an action word, and steps should include specific measurements and details that are important to the investigation. Okay. And again, there are the review of the rules. So today, what you're going to be doing next is you're going to go and do a Google form that has some examples of procedures, and you're going to be using these 4 rules to figure out what's wrong or missing from the procedure and identify that in the Google form. So if you're not sure of how to do that, you could go back to the Google slideshow, because I also posted the slideshow along with this video, and look at the rules again and look at the examples. If you're confident, you can go right ahead and move on to the slideshow. Have a good day, you guys. Thank you.